And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the Wheel E podcast. I'm your host, Mike Atoll, and I'm joined again by Electrek's Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. So we have got a pile of new electric bike stories, as well as a bit of electric motorcycle and even an electric boat to talk about today. So let's just do a quick rundown of what we have on the list here. Looks like we've got some new electric bike charging stations that have been installed in the US. We're going to be looking at some new electric bike carbon belt drivetrains from Gates. We've got an awesome review that Seth just did on Luna's new low-cost folding fat tire electric bike. The United States Postal Service is testing out electric bike mail delivery. We've got a new seated electric scooter from a pretty interesting company. Energica just unveiled a new electric motorcycle model. And we'll also be talking about a couple other sort of non-e-bike but still interesting vehicles, including that flying electric water taxi and a pretty cool three-wheeled electric trike from China. So where are we starting off today, Seth?
All right. The electric bike charging stations installed in the West Coast Electric Highway.
So if you're not familiar, the West Coast Electric Highway is essentially a series of electric car chargers, or what used to be just electric car chargers, installed along several different highways on the West Coast. But we've got some pretty exciting news that a section of this highway is now going to have electric bike chargers. And that's a pretty big deal because we haven't really seen sort of this public access to electric bike chargers before. But in Oregon, they're installing at about 40 or almost 50, I think, even electric charging stations, these 120 volt plugs that anyone that has an electric bike and their charger with them will simply be able to roll up and plug into. And I guess you could probably plug in your phone or your blender or anything else that runs off of 120 volts there. But for the most part, this is really meant for micromobility. So for e-bikes, that's great, but also, electric scooters, one wheels, all sorts of just small electric vehicles that the charger itself is slightly larger than pocket sized and you can actually bring with you. And now there's somewhere to plug in. I know for myself, when I've done some longer road trips on e-bikes, it's been a bit tricky to find a available plug, not even a free plug in terms of free charging, but just, anywhere that you can find a plug to plug into. I've had to roll up to gas stations and plug in where the ice machine is plugged in before.
Oh, wow.
Or sometimes you can get, creative and find other sort of public infrastructure that's been plugged in. And we often call that guerrilla charging. If it's at a business, I'll try to go in and buy something, so at least, I buy a soda and then I have sort of paid for a bit of their electricity. Not that, it costs more than probably 10 cents or so to fill up there. But I mean, that's the point. So, having these sort of public access to chargers for e-bikes, it's definitely a new thing. And I think it's going to be a big deal for riders that are definitely out there doing, longer road trips. What do you think, Seth?
Yeah, for sure. You just need a 110 or I guess 120, depending where you are. It really isn't a huge, ass, especially at these huge charging stations where they've got a lot of juice going in. And, frankly, they could probably go around and find some, like a cafe or, like you said, a gas station and say, hey, we'd like to put you on the map. All you have to do is make available a 110 outlet for, you can see from the picture. It's just, a 110 outlet, although there's that little line across, which means I think you can get 20 amps out of that. Not
yeah,
that,
I've never been real familiar with those.
Yeah, so I guess you could get, let's see, 2 kilowatts. 2 kilowatts out of there. That starts to get up to the bigger bikes, I guess. You could maybe charge a Onyx Racer or something. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it seems so easy. Like, why not just say, make a contract or something and say, hey, we want to put you on our electric bike map. All you have to do is promise to let somebody use your 110 volt outlet. And even if somebody's just sucking down electricity all day there, it's not going to be like $1, and $1 gets you, somebody who's going to be theoretically, if it's a restaurant, you're eating at your restaurant, or if it's a store, shopping at your store. So I don't know. It seems like a pretty easy thing to do, especially with the low cost aspect of it.
Yeah, and these days it's just such a requirement in cities where, e-bikes used to be sort of an oddity that you'd see once in a while, but now these days there are so many of them.
They're everywhere.
And when you're out there riding all day, especially like, delivery riders, that sort of thing, to just be able to plug in for 20 minutes and get a bit of a charge, it's going to be such a big benefit.
Yeah, and where it makes the most sense, I think, is those like trail cafes, or cafes along bike paths. Those things, it's like kind of a no-brainer to set something up like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't want to get into the comments too early, but Carlin in San Diego's concerned about safety. I guess that's something, if they could put like a camera on there, or a locked area or something, because I guess somebody would steal a $20-$30 charger if it's in the wrong area.
Yeah, maybe you could lock it to your bike somehow.
Right.
That's probably what I would do if I was going to walk away. But
It would be
I
kind of
think the
nice
more
it would be kind of nice if they standardized the bike charging plug. Like there's like the barrel charger that I think a lot of companies use, the 48 volt. And then there's, a lot of those 3-prong ones that I see
yeah.
around.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I mean, if we could ever get to standardized plugs, I mean, I think, we've talked about your dream is the USB-C, so that
yep.
would be wonderful.
Yeah.
One
All
day.
right. One day. All right. Next up, Gates unveils its next gen carbon belt drives for bicycles and electric bikes.
Yeah, so Gates, for anyone who isn't familiar, is probably the leader in bicycle belt drivetrains. There are some other companies out there, but it's kind of like, Ziploc bags. Gates is just kind of like the name that comes to mind when you think of belt drives. And part of that is because they just have so many interesting solutions for different type of bikes. And they do, all sorts of power transmission, not just bicycles. But for bikes and e-bikes especially, where you've got a lot of power being applied through that drivetrain, especially more than a typical human rider is going to be putting out, using these high power power transmission belts has really proven to have a lot of advantages. And so when you combine things like lower maintenance, quieter riding, that sort of thing, and then you add in these new developments that they've come out with, Gates is really doing a good job of sort of staying at the forefront of the industry here. These new products they just released, they go in a couple of directions. So generally, Gates has been on the sort of more premium end, and that usually means that you're going to find them on mid-drive e-bikes. Just because of the added cost of a nice system like these carbon belts, you're usually not going to find them on the lower cost hub motor bikes, though it's a bit of foreshadowing for a few minutes from now. But so one of the lines that they've updated here is one of their more powerful e-bike lines, and it's designed for those mid-drive motors that really put out a lot of power. But interestingly, they've also come out with updates to a new line that's really meant for hub motor bikes or even just pedal bikes, something that's not going to have that crazy torque of a mid-drive motor. And so what that tells me is that Gates is not only expanding on the premium end, but they're trying to break into the sort of mid-level e-bikes as well. Probably not going to see these on sub $1,000 e-bikes. The few belt drive e-bikes we've seen under $1,000 generally use other brands, usually no name, probably just some random Chinese factory making a belt drive setup. But it could be that we start to see more of these belt drives on hub motor bikes and bikes that aren't quite as premium as we'd normally find a Gates carbon drive on. I don't want to give away Seth's next story, but what do you think about that, Seth? You think we're going to see more of these in
Yeah.
sort of more diverse applications?
Yeah, it's for sure that they're going down market here, and that's great. The belt drive is a benefit in a lot of ways. Obviously, it's lighter than a chain. It's quieter and it lasts a lot longer. It can handle way more torque. These are the similar belts that are on like Harleys and stuff. Not the same, but similar. So you're never gonna torque out of a Gates belt drive versus chains, which, you know, when you're switching gears or whatever. The other thing is like you have to have an internal hub with these. So that development is kind of moving along. We're starting to see some less expensive internal geared hubs, as well as the other thing about a Gates belt is that you either need to break the triangle in the back, or you know, I guess build around it to get the belt, you know, inside the back triangle but outside on the other one. There was another company, I can't remember the name of it, that had a belt that you could actually take off, you know, like split it open like a chain. But you know, there was like a Kickstarter kind of thing. So I was kind of wondering if Gates was going to get into that game as well. So you didn't have to break the back triangle. But
Yeah, I've seen them innovating, but not that far yet.
mhm.
One thing that they did roll out this time was a new tensioning device, so that you could actually use their drives on full suspension bikes. So, like on a mountain bike, where
Right, it's kind of
that chain length would be, you know, changing normally, but when the suspension is active. So for a belt drive conversion, or if, you know, an OEM wanted to build a belt drive mountain bike with full suspension, they would be able to do that with a new tensioner. They didn't have any photos of that yet, and we've seen companies sort of build their own tensioners in the past, but I think Gates is trying to encourage companies to like keep it within the Gates ecosystem and, you know, partner with them on those designs.
yeah. I wonder if you could with the tensioner theoretically like have gears. Probably not. We're not there yet.
Yeah, I could see one day potentially them developing something. It gets a little complicated with wear issues. Then I think
Right,
that's sort of one of the big advantages of Gates, is that because you're not moving it side to side, they can basically last not forever, but for, you know, tens of thousands of miles.
right. Forever in bike terms.
Exactly. I probably outlive a lot of people's bikes.
Right. When people. All right. Moving along. Good segue to the Luna Eclipse, full suspension, fat tire, foldable BMX e-bike. So a lot of stuff in there, and it's priced under 1,400. So this was a review I did, and you know we saw this bike. Uh, Eric Hicks, the founder of Luna, is active on Facebook, and I think it's called the Fast E-Bike group. And we saw him kind of hinting at this for a while. And he was like, "Hey, this is gonna be a lot better than, you know, the juiced Scorpions and the Super 73s of the world." You know, I don't know about that, but it's a lot lighter. So you know, when I saw this bike at first, I was like, "Oh, this is a lot of things." Like it's got rear suspension, it's got, you know, front and rear suspension. It's foldable. It's got fat tires. It's light at 55 pounds. It's got kind of a BMX look, and somebody in the comments was like, "I've been BMX biking for 50 years, and that is not a BMX bike." And I'm like, "Yes, I know. It's not a BMX bike. It's heavier, and like for 100 reasons, it's not a BMX bike, but it kind of looks a little bit like one."
It's got the
But
proportions.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, you know, for me, I was like, "Oh, this is something totally new and crazy." And then, of course, the commenters are like, "Oh, that looks like an Enki Billy bike," and I was like, "Oh," you know, I looked at it and I was like, "Yeah, that's exactly an Enki Billy." And then somebody else was like, "Yeah, I think Swagtron copied the Enki Billy with the EB8." And I was like, "What?" And I looked at that, and yet that's same, you know, same look. What's you know, uh, Eric Hicks and the Luna team are great at is kind of taking a form factor and kind of just, you know, amping everything up, and then at the same time um, bringing the price down. So, you know, the Enki Billy I think is $2,500. That this is over $1,000 less than that. And I think the motor, you know, another thing Luna's famous for is like jacking the power out of a motor with a, you know, a controller that they've toyed with, and you know they've done a great job here. I've gone up a lot of hills, never overheated on this particular bike. Um, so you know you get a more powerful bike. I think better components, maybe better shocks. The brakes aren't, so the brakes are mechanical. I think the Yankee Billy had hydraulic. I know the Swagtron didn't have better parts, but I think that one was going for like $1,000 or something. So this is kind of the sweet spot. It's a great bike. It's balanced really well. I mean, I would say maybe they could have went with like metal pedals. Um, the brakes are a unique. You can kind of see the handlebars there. Um, a
Yeah,
little
do they
bit,
feel different? I was looking at the brake levers there.
a little bit different. They're not. It's not a big deal. Um, the What I didn't like is I prefer kind of a thumb throttle. This is like the whole handlebar twist, and like you turn the bike on, and it's whatever setting you're in, as long as it's on. If you twist the throttle, it goes, and it really goes. And so like if the bike is on and you're like pulling out of your garage and you accidentally twist the throttle a little bit, it like it's gone.
Yeah, for
So
that reason, we haven't seen full twists in such a long time. That's an interesting choice.
yeah, but I mean, once you're on the bike, it's fine. It's fun. Um, yeah, there's the Tektro brakes there. I did have to tighten those a little bit after a couple days, which is normal as the bike gets settled into. Um, what else? So the motor is it's labeled a 500 watt. This is typical Luna. They put a double the amps controller, so it's 48 volts, 21 amp controller. So that's just over 1,000 watts of power, and you can feel it like right away. It's definitely not a 500 watt motor. You can almost do a wheelie. Um, the downside. I mean, so we talked previously about a Gates belt drive. This has a great a I think it's called a CTX. Um, it's a great setup until you start getting to like 20 miles per hour, and because there's no gear set on here, um, you're basically your legs just start flying, and once you get to 20 miles per hour, you're not pedaling anymore. It's too hard. And then this thing tops out at 25 miles per hour. So basically anything from like 18 to 20 miles per hour and up, it's throttle only, which that's fine, but I typically enjoy pedaling. So it's kind of a trade-off there. Like putting a geared system on there would have really jacked the price up. What are your thoughts on here?
So my biggest question is, how does the suspension feel? Because for at this price, full suspension is so rare, and it is a simplified suspension setup. It's like direct suspension with no
hmm
linkage. But if it feels fine, then $1,500, that's fine. What were your thoughts on the suspension?
So the front suspension is actually quite nice. There's 4 inches of travel, um, and it's not it's just a spring. It's not there's no air going on or whatever, and you can lock it out. The rear suspension, I have to say, is pretty lackluster. It kind of just if you bounce hard on it, it'll make it do some movement. And I tried to loosen it up a little bit, but it was still just like kind of rock hard. So I don't know. For me, I think you could replace that suspension with a more expensive thing if the soft back was your thing. But you're already on fat tires. I don't know. It seemed like a fine uh, setup, especially for $1,400.
Yeah, and that's a good point that, like you're saving so much money elsewhere that if you really want nice rear suspension, you can always, spend a couple extra $100 and pop in a nice shock with good damping, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, like we've got a bunch of bikes here, e-bikes here, and everybody kind of wants to ride this thing. So it's kind of passed the test really, and all the parts are solid. Um, and actually, I don't have any good display pictures, maybe in the video, but the display is really nice as well. It's big and it's easy to read, and you know exactly if your power is cutting out or whatever. If you're at 25 miles per hour, and that's the other weird thing. Like Luna chose to cut the power out at 25, which is above class 1 or 2 and below class 3. So it's like class 2.5 or something there. I don't know what you call that. But
Yeah, every now and again we see those sort of like mid-level. They don't go all the way to 28 miles an hour, but like they go to 24, 25. I wonder if it's just the native limit of that motor. And so,
probably it's probably something like that.
yeah, I think for most people though, the difference between 20 to 25 is going to feel like a lot. That last 3 miles an hour, it would be nice, but I think once you pass 20, you're really feeling it.
Yeah, yeah, and I got it going downhill at like 45 miles per hour, and things started feeling really not good. So I think I think 25 miles per hour is a great speed for this bike. It's very safe, very stable. It feels great. Um, so maybe at 28 things start getting weird, but great bike overall. And good news, I have another Luna bike that I'm reviewing, which I'm excited about, the X2 with the ludicrous controller, which is kind of controversial, and we're trying to figure out exactly, if it's overheating, it's my fault or the world's fault or what. So uh, stay tuned for that.
Yeah,
All right,
pushing the envelope.
pushing the envelope for sure. All right, moving on. USPS, United States Post Office, already testing mail delivery by electric bike with these neat little US built mail bikes.
Yeah, it's funny because a few weeks ago I wrote a bit of an opinion piece, kind of scathing the USPS for not looking at electric cargo bikes as part of the overall mail delivery solution, because in a lot of Europe, that's like one of the main mail delivery solutions. And then we heard from Coaster Cycles that in fact they have been trialing electric bikes for mail delivery. And this US company has built a number of them that are being tested right now in Miami. So what you can see on the screen there are a few of the different designs. They're basically electric tricycles, and they've got big cargo boxes on the back. They've got a couple different styles of cargo boxes that they're testing. And these run on Bosch mid-drive systems. So you've got like a pretty standard mid-drive motor, batteries. It's funny that they only have one battery, but I guess you could, carry a few batteries with you and swap them in. But also, these are not throttle cargo e-bikes; they're pedal assists. So even though there's only one battery and it's a big, heavy bike, you're probably going to get some pretty decent range because the rider is pedaling along and adding some of their own assist. But essentially, these are going to help replace big mail trucks, or even the little guys. Though the new electric mail trucks we've been seeing are certainly much bigger. And in tight urban areas where a mail truck would take up a significant portion of the road, or especially like on city streets where sometimes you'll see delivery vehicles parked in the bike lane, that sort of thing, having a smaller vehicle that can actually navigate small streets, alleyways, even park on the sidewalk if the sidewalks are wide enough and they don't get in the way of people or wheelchairs or anything, then this could actually be a quite useful solution for those types of areas. We often hear when we show these things comments from people saying, oh, this wouldn't work in my town, or I live like 20 miles from the nearest mail depot. And like, all right, fine, you guys need a truck. But
Right.
in some cases, a truck is overkill. And so to see that the USPS is already trialing these things, and by all accounts they're working great, gives me some really good hope. Seth, have you ever tried these bigger cargo trikes before?
Yeah, I mean, not this exactly, but I think at Eurobike and I feel like that Chris Nolte at Propel had one of these similar bikes at his shop one time that I drove around.
Yeah, you think
Um,
these could work?
yeah, for sure. I mean, like you said, it's got to be a dense environment. This bike probably goes like 10 miles or 20 miles a day at the most. Um, the container in the back, that's probably something similar to a small truck's uh, storage. So, you know, I think it makes a lot of sense. I wonder, like, are the drivers fit enough to pedal? I don't know. I mean, with the pedal assist and the Bosch system, it's pretty easy. But is that a workman's comp kind of thing? If you hurt your leg or whatever, you can't pedal. There's all these like little questions, but for the most part, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I guess if you're not fit enough, then you get fit pretty quickly. Or if you're borderline, you
Right.
become fit quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is like you can park these things like up on a sidewalk versus, a truck where you're not going to want to do that. You could like you could ride this up in somebody's front lawn if you wanted to. I mean, I don't think anybody would care that much. Versus, mail trucks, you can't really do something like that. So there's a lot of advantages. I know in New York City, the UPS driver used to just get a ticket every day parking, and UPS would just pay the tickets.
Wow.
Like that was his solution to the situation because he couldn't double park. The truck's huge, couldn't double park. But if he had something like this, he could just park it on the sidewalk. Theoretically, it probably wouldn't get stolen. There's probably some sort of security on there, and could save money in parking tickets as well.
Yeah, I mean, these things, like, it makes so much sense. And to me, the funny thing is that they just aren't more common in the US. Like, I was just in Iceland last week, and we were staying in an Airbnb, and the mail guy rolled up in basically something like this that was a little more scooter styled, and like delivered the mail and rode off. And it was just like a normal Tuesday. But here, we have these gigantic mail trucks that go around on short little urban routes, and it makes no sense. So to see these smaller mail vehicles becoming at least test vehicles and hopefully succeeding to make it into the fleet, I think is really promising.
Yeah, and of course, the other side of Electrek talks about the the big controversy over the mail trucks going to this Oshkosh and only 10% being electric. So more of these would be great.
Yeah, it's part of I would say, like, the mail ecosystem, right? Like the
Right.
right type of vehicles in the right places.
Yep. All right, moving on. I don't know if this is the right pronunciation. Fucare, a new 20-mile-per-hour seated electric scooter, is a low-cost option for comfortable riding. I love this thing.
Yeah, I don't know. That's how I pronounce it. Until someone tells me differently, I'm going with Fucare. So,
Okay.
yeah, Fucare, they've got a number of different interesting electric mobility options. So we've looked at some of their bikes before. This is a scooter that it starts out like a normal standing kick scooter. You think something like Bird, Lime, Xiaomi, that sort of thing. But it also comes with a seat that you can add to the base. And it actually looks like a pretty decent seat, not like one of these like DIY hacked together things. And so it turns it into what looks like a pretty effective seated scooter, yet it's still fairly light. I think it's like 50 pounds or so. So not as light as like a typical Xiaomi scooter, but certainly lighter than a Vespa. You could pick it up and put it in the trunk of your car if you needed to, and you can even still fold down the handlebars. But for anyone who doesn't feel as comfortable standing on a scooter and going 20 miles per hour, which is, a normal human thing to feel because it's a
Yeah, I
bit
was going to
odd.
say, I'm in there. I'm in that group.
Yeah, that's reasonable, riding along on wheels the size of a salad plate at 20 miles an hour.
Yeah,
So this
you
gives
have
you.
the control, between your legs, you have like more control of the vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like a sort of native bike feel, right? That people just essentially feel more stable on a bicycle type vehicle.
Yeah. I mean, there's the same touch points as like a Vespa scooter when maybe not exactly the proportions, but like it's a lot more like something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, for so many people that just feel more comfortable being lowered to the ground and not feeling like you're, standing on a very small platform, that this is just going to be a much more comfortable and stable way to ride. And I think people will be able to ride faster because they'll feel safer in that way. Not that, you should ride faster than is safe for your area, but I know a lot of times people on standing scooters don't push them to, even their like 15-mile-an-hour limit, just because it feels so weird to be standing on a little patch while flying along with the ground like inches beneath your feet.
Yep.
So everything else stays the same here, but just sitting down makes that a lot more comfortable. And
Yeah.
I got to look up the price here because I forget. Here it is, $799.
That's a
So
good price.
yeah, I mean, if you're comparing it to most seated electric scooters, it's definitely much lower. It's a bit higher than like a GoTrack scooter or something that would be a standing scooter, but it also has higher power. I think it's 500 watts. It goes faster at 20 miles an hour. So it's a nice sort of mid-power electric scooter, I'd say. And then that seating option is just super cool, in my opinion.
Yeah. So how does that seating option like? Is it like four screws or how do you get that thing on and off? And can you store it, or how does it work?
Yeah, so usually they're bolted on. I couldn't actually determine it from here because it's a new product and they didn't show how it's connected, but they do show both the on and off method. Actually, I think in
Mhm.
the top photo there, the gray scooter doesn't have its seat. So usually these are bolted on, just like you said, 4 bolts in a square pattern. But they're going to be sending one out once they have them available in the US. So we'll be able to test it and then we'll know for sure how it connects.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if they could like fold it back, behind the wheel or something. I don't know if that would be great overall, but the mechanism for getting that thing on and off is going to be a big part of it. Is there any storage in the seat? It looks like there could be something there.
I don't think there's any storage. That would be a great idea, definitely, to have just like a little glove box there. But
Hmm.
they haven't mentioned anything about having it accessible. It might be, full thickness foam there, and then perhaps you're not left with too much storage.
Yeah, and then so I'm pretty sure the handlebars fold down, so you can get this in the back of a trunk of a car or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. So even with the seat there, they fold almost sort of flat, parallel along with the deck.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I mean that's a great package. For $800 and you're going 20 miles per hour around town, and it can fit in your trunk. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I'd ride it,
Yep.
especially if I, want to sit instead of stand.
Right. But you do have that standing option. All right.
There you go.
Moving on. Energica unveils Experia electric motorcycle. Its new long-range green tourer, fast charging included.
So this is the newest model from the Italian electric motorcycle company Energica, which I pronounced Energica until like a month ago when I finally heard it spoken the correct way from actual Italians. But
Which
this
is
is Energica, apparently.
Energica. Okay.
Yes, yes. I can't believe how long I was saying it wrong, but it happens when you read words instead of hearing them.
Right.
So this is the fourth model from the company, and this is designed as their touring model. So it's got their huge battery on it. It's 22 and a half kilowatt hours at its peak, but the usable is something like 19 or so that you can actually pull out of it. But still, that's much larger than anything we've seen so far from Zero or Harley. So it's definitely a big battery. In terms of range, that works its way out to about 130 highway miles, or if you're in the city, about twice that. So about 260 miles in the city, or that's 420 kilometers in the city, or 209 kilometers on the highway. So, still not like ride all day on one charge range, but 130 miles is going to get you, a couple of hours if you're doing reasonable speeds, right? So, if you're sticking to like 65, 70 miles an hour, that sort of thing. And every couple of hours, people are going to want to get off and stretch their legs. Anyways, I know I don't ride for more than a couple hours at a time. I'm not trying to set any records.
Right.
And because it has level 3 DC fast charging, you can pull off for, a half hour sandwich break and you can get like 80, 85% of your charge back into it. So, again, like we're not quite at a 5 minute gas fill up here, but if you can, stretch your legs for 30 minutes and get almost recharged, that's pretty good in my bike.
Hmm.
And then, of course, there's level 1 and level 2 charging as well. If you just want to charge on like a public charger or overnight at home, which of course is how most people are going to charge these that aren't actively going on 1,000-mile road trips. In terms of speed, I think it's something like a little over 100 miles an hour. Not the fastest bike. It's 112 miles an hour. There it is. So not the fastest bike that Energica's made. They're really known for their 125 to 150 mile an hour racing bikes. But again, this is a touring bike. This is for someone that wants to enjoy reasonable speeds on the highways. So I don't think 112 miles an hour is going to hold anybody back too much. Now, the main thing that we don't know yet is the price. We're still waiting to find out. But most of Energica's bikes are around $20,000. So we would expect this to fall in that neighborhood.
So this bike would be kind of the Cannonball Run champion of electric bikes at this point, right? It's got range, fast charging.
Yeah, and it would probably be more comfortable too, because it just looks like a little bit more of a comfort style, legs a little more forward, bars a little higher, that sort of thing. So I think if anyone wants to go out and try to take Stephen Day's Cannonball Run record, which was also set on an Energica, this would probably be the bike to do it. I agree.
He's probably somewhere between LA and New York at this very moment.
Yeah, definitely. He's got to get the newest record right away.
Yeah.
I can see it.
And you said it charges at level 2 speeds. It has like an inverter built in that can handle level 2, or is it kind of,
So I'm not sure what the level 2 speed is that it charges at, but
mhm.
yeah, it does have it built in. Um,
That's
I
good
want to
because
say
I think the Harley only does level 1 and level 3, right?
yes. You can plug in at a level 2 station, but it will charge at like
Level 1
a
speeds.
thousand watts. Yeah,
Right.
something like that.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you basically have the inverter, so you're schlepping the inverter around with you everywhere, and that's I don't know I don't know if that makes a ton of sense, but I guess with this kind of bike, it does.
Yeah, I mean it's designed for touring. I mean not specifically. That's what it can do, but this is probably going to get more use as someone's like everyday bike and the ability to go touring on it. But having that much battery and the ability to level 2 or level 3 charge, it opens so many doors, and it answers that argument that we always hear that like, oh, I can't ride far, or I can't charge fast. Well, now you can do both, right?
All right, Zero Fun in the comments says 3 kilowatt level 2 charging on it. I have mine on order so I can break my Cannonball record. Might also have to change your screen name, but so 3 kilowatts is about at level 2, so 240. That's about shoot, I can't do math on the fly. 4 times 3, 12. So like 12 amps. Yeah, that's not bad at 240.
Yeah, I think Steven started with zeros before switching over to Energica. So yeah, I think that
Makes.
handle stuck with him.
Oh, is that him?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's Steven, right? He'll
Okay.
let us know real quick.
Okay. Cool. Well, welcome aboard. That's awesome. Great bike. Can't wait to see some new records being set here. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on. World's first. So we're moving on from two-wheeled things to no-wheeled things here. World's first flying electric taxi boat, the Candela. Is that pronounced right?
I think so.
Okay. P-8 Voyager unveiled in Venice.
Candela is, of all the companies that don't have wheels, is like my favorite EV company right now. They build the coolest electric boats because these things literally fly over the water. They have hydrofoils, which basically do in water what an airfoil does in air, which is create lift. And so the whole boat lifts out of the water and flies like almost a meter, like 2.5 feet above the waves. And so not only does that make the ride much smoother, but it's also super efficient because you're not pushing all that water out of the way. So they have a sort of relatively small, I think it's like 50 kilowatt hour battery that can go for several hours on the water because it just operates so much more efficiently. And so while they've started with basically, private passenger speedboats, they're moving towards more commercial boats as well. And the P8 is their water taxi that has that cool sort of enclosed cabin back there, so you can, put your fares back there. They're in like a nice little luxury cabin. And in places like Venice, where you're seeing a lot of commercial water traffic, not so much in the canals, but outside of the canals more, or especially in Stockholm, where Candela's from in Sweden, the archipelago there, you've got a lot of commercial water traffic, water taxis. And I mean, I think all over the world, there are places that this type of boat would work well. And not only is it going to give you that nice, smoother ride and use less energy, but it's just going to be a nicer experience for passengers. They're not inhaling the fumes, you're not hearing the noise of a motor. And it's just like a much more elegant solution that I would love to see a lot of these commercial maritime companies that do this type of passenger traffic convert to. And then the other cool thing about this boat is the motor that they're using. They developed it in house. It's called the C Pod, and it's actually two very long, narrow motors that counter rotate propellers along the same shaft. And so not only is the boat quieter because it uses an electric motor, but the entire motor itself is under the water, so you don't even hear it like you do on the older Candela boats, like the C7 that I was able to test ride. You could hear the motor a bit because it's up where like a normal outboard is. Here with these new motors, it's all submerged and it's basically silent.
Yeah, that's awesome. One other thing about I don't know if you mentioned it, but you don't get nearly as seasick on these things as you do on a typical boat, which for me is a huge deal. I used to take the hydrofoil from Hong Kong to I can't remember the name of that place, but it's across the water bay, and I was like, oh, I don't want to go on a boat, but this thing was just like a jet that flew across the water, and it was super smooth. Um, so the fact that these are available for mere mortals and taxis is awesome. It's going to change the game, really. I can imagine
Yeah, I
these
was on
like in,
a
in Paris and all these other like urban areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on a ferry 2 weeks ago, and there were these like really long sea swells. It was a super windy day, and not to get into too many details, but I didn't get to keep my breakfast that day. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of these types of hydrofoil boats. And from what I can tell, Candela is the company that's going to make it happen because I don't see anyone else nearly as far along in the process of actually getting these boats in the water.
Yeah, I was thinking Hong Kong to Macau. Finally, it entered my brain a minute later, but
There,
that's a great ride. I think there's another opportunity in like the Long Beach to Catalina Island. I think there's a catamaran that does it now, but it could go much faster. I think I don't know. Did they tell you what kind of wave threshold this thing could deal with?
I think it's a meter and a half on this newest model. The C7 I did, it was less than a meter. It was like I think it was like 2 feet. So a meter and a half would be like 5 feet that they can
Mhm.
handle.
Yeah, so definitely on the more calm days, you could take this on ocean going trips. But great product. I personally can't wait to try one. I think it's going to change sea life in places like Stockholm and other cities. Make it much
Yeah,
better.
absolutely. The faster they can get out there, the better.
All right, moving on. The awesomely weird Alibaba electric vehicle of the week last week, the $500 three-wheeled electric motorcycle. And I remember three-wheelers being super dangerous, but this one looks slightly less super dangerous.
Yeah, well, if the center of gravity helps, then it's got lead acid batteries about as low as you can possibly get to the ground. So it should have pretty good rollover for a tricycle, I'll say. But this is, if anyone's not familiar with the awesomely weird Alibaba electric vehicle of the week, it's sort of a fun tongue-in-cheek column that we run each weekend where we find these fun, sort of oddball electric vehicles on China's big shopping website. So the trike here is sort of outfitted as like a police trike, I guess. I mean, it only goes 25 miles an hour, so you're not going to be in any high-speed pursuits. But essentially, it's sort of the that outlawed three-wheeled ATV design that we don't have in the US anymore, but all electric. And it's got a sort of weird banana seat that actually has a second hump there for a second rider. So if you want to, have someone join you on this nightmare, then that would be a fun sort of bonding experience, I guess.
A
But
second victim.
yeah, I mean, it does have rear suspension. It doesn't look like super nice, but it's there. So, between front and rear suspension and those giant tires with, you can keep those pretty low pressure. And this actually looks like a pretty fun ride as long as you can keep all three wheels on the ground, or at least for, long periods of time. Getting one wheel up might be kind of fun.
Yeah, I don't know how I would feel about turns with this thing. I'd probably want to take those pretty slow. Uh,
Yeah, fair enough.
but it does look like fun. I mean, especially for as shown here on the beach. That seems like a fun situation, and the price obviously is where it's supposed to be. Is this a typical Alibaba thing where it's $500 and then you got to get it from China to wherever you are.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So it's like $500, and then shipping is a mystery, and port fees are a mystery, and then they're like, "Oh, did you want batteries and tires? Well, that's an extra." So don't expect to get this in your garage for 500, but probably sub 2,000, you could get it in your garage.
This picture I'm looking at here, does this is this like a siren or is this not connected to the bike? This pole thing in the back.
Yeah, so I think that's in their police version, like a
Oh, there's a
police light.
police version of. Oh, yes, and this has red and blue front lights as well. So
Yeah.
the cops could be riding these around your town someday, probably never, but interesting idea there.
Yeah, the police sort of concept here is where I told our graphic artist Michael Bauer to try and get me like a chips helmet or something so I
Right.
could be like a highway patrol. And we got most of the way there, I think. So if you want to live out your chips fantasy,
I think he
but
mixed Evil Knievel in there with the the hat.
yeah, a little something for everyone, I think.
Right, right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. That is all the stories for today, but I'm going to jump through the comments here because we had quite a few. Um, let's see. Carlin in San Diego, or Carl in San Diego, thanks for clarifying how the charging works. It seemed impossible for them. So we're talking about the electric bike charging installed on the West Coast Highway. It seemed impossible for them to standardize the charger connection. Do you know what the current limit is?
I think you were sussing it out with the 2,000 watt potential peak for the AC circuit, but
Yeah.
which I guess would be like a 25 amp breaker.
Yeah. 25 amp breaker, 20 amps at 100 something volts, and you're probably going to lose some in the conversion to DC. So you'd be lucky to hit 2 kilowatts, which is pretty solid. Um,
Yeah, even
y-
if you had a few friends that you brought like a 6 plug outlet and you guys all charged, I mean, like a 200 watt e-bike charger, you could plug several of those in.
yeah, and an hour you're not going to get fully charged on most bikes, but you'll get another few miles off added to your range. So and then of course he added we'll have to lock down our chargers somehow. All right. He adds, I'm assuming Carl's a guy. Belts may be the future when we get pedantic about life cycle assessment. Chains are complex and wear out too quickly if we use bikes for transportation. That's true. I was surprised to learn that chains are still more efficient than belts. What like? Do you know anything about that?
I I guess it's probably from the sort of action of the rubber stretching and expanding as it goes around that tight circle. There's probably, some internal friction and you lose some energy there as opposed to the links in a chain. It's all very, inelastic. So
Yeah,
that's my guess, but I'm not sure exactly why. But I have seen that it's like a 2-3% difference in the efficiency with chains winning out.
yeah. I mean, for most people, it won't be noticeable, and the soft and the other advantages are going to outweigh the small efficiency gain there. But it was just
Yeah.
interesting to me because I felt like a belt drive would be more efficient, but maybe it's those like little notches that keep it in line and keep it from slipping and stuff.
Yeah,
It
and
might,
especially for an electric bike, I mean,
right?
2 to 3%, like you'll never notice
You'll
that.
never notice. All right. Onderel says, "Hey Micah, any long-term issues or downsides with your Priority Current? I'm stuck between it and their new Ride One Up Prodigy. Those are both two interesting bikes that I know you love, and was wondering how the unbranded motor compares to the name brand like Broza."
So, to answer the first question, no problem at all with the motor, but I wouldn't necessarily call the motor on the Priority Current unbranded. It's out there in enough places that I don't think they'll be angry at me for saying that it's a truck run motor because people have figured it out in forums all over the internet. And that's a motor that is also used by a number of other companies. The PX Cycle I think it's from a Seattle company uses it, and the Electric X Premium. It's a great motor. It's not doesn't have the brand recognition of something like a Brose motor, but I think it's a very well made motor. It's a little bit louder than a Brose. Those German motors are very nicely engineered and pretty quiet. So it's not quite as nice, but I wouldn't worry, about having reliability issues because it's a very well made motor.
I'll just add that I'm a huge Brose motor fan. So if you're on the fence, I would lean toward Brose. Harry Wild, we're talking about the Luna Eclipse here. He says no fenders, no road racing seat versus a soft seat, no lights. That's true. There's no lights front or back, although it has reflectors and easy to put lights on. No hydraulic brakes. That's another true. No sail. So Harry Wild is not in the Luna Eclipse fan club. Those are all valid points. If you want fenders, there's a lot of options out there. I mean, I think even the Electrek XP has fenders, right?
Yeah, it's got like built-in steel fenders. I'm pretty sure they're steel.
Yeah, so this is a very purpose-built light bike. I agree. Lights would have been a benefit there. The road racing seat, actually, I have to push back on. I really enjoy pedaling this bike, and that was kind of my big takeaway. Is like, hey, this is a fat tire e-bike that actually you can pedal. I mean, you can even leave the motor off and get around fine on this bike. So I like the road racing seat. I mean, for the price, you're not going to get a great seat, road racing, soft, whatever. If you don't like the seat, go to Walmart and get a new seat. It's not rocket science. It's not expensive to change either. The hydraulic brakes, a good point. You're talking about a $1,400 bike though. Uh, Hydraulic brakes and a belt drive on a $1,400 bike would be, I guess, a bridge too far. So you want hydraulic brakes? You go get hydraulic brakes. You probably pay $500 or something. So I agree with all your criticisms, but it all comes back to making a $1,400 bike that you can pedal.
Yeah, it's a balance.
Yep. All right. We have some people from LinkedIn. Hello from Austria. Hello from Nigeria. Same guy. So I don't know what's going on there. All right, Carl's back. I like the postal bikes. No doubt that these bikes will work in many places and will remind everyone that micromobility is the way to go. It's a great point.
Definitely.
You see the post office guy on a bike, then you're in a car. You're like, maybe I'm doing it wrong. All right, Greg Yan is another fender guy. I guess fenders are very important to a lot of people. No fenders, no sale. And then we have Jack Ripper, who's on the wrong podcast. He's saying Elon is just trying to scare off union organizers. The Starbucks union stuff scares the crap out of the greedy coward. All right. Check back in on Friday for that podcast. Ernest on LinkedIn is saying getting fit. That's great. Carl's back saying many routes are on foot or for postal. So this allows routes that are more spread out to go super low carbon. That's a good point. My old house was the post guy would just get out and just walk around. So I guess this would allow him to be in the, on a seat more often. So, all right, Greg Jan's back. Amazon won't get them for deliveries. They change routes with different drivers for same location. Plus, Amazon cuts depots after less than 3 years of operations. I think was that about the
I assume that's for the USPS bikes.
All right, Harry Wild 800 is a great price. We're talking, I think, about the Fucare 20-mile-per-hour seated scooter. That's true. I think we're in full agreement there. My Segway Max G30P is $900. So how does that compare specs wise?
And that one doesn't have a seat, I don't think.
Right.
So I think the Max has a bit longer range. I think it's got like a 40-mile battery or something. But the speed, I believe, is either 20 or similar. Maybe Harry will let us know before the end here.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder if like maybe there's a business just making seats for scooters that are already out there. Just
I've
like
seen aftermarket ones. Yeah,
yeah,
there some of them look a little iffy. I don't know if I'd want to go full speed on them, but I have
yeah,
seen some entrepreneurs getting creative and making aftermarket seats.
yeah. It wouldn't be hard to just do like a clamp. Like clamp it down, and then you could have like a universal thing, kind of like how they were making universal hoverboard go karts a while
Yeah.
ago. Maybe that
Yeah,
same
absolutely.
same energy can go into there. All right, Wonderl having some more e-bike deliveries can also hopefully motivate municipalities to fix some of the awful bike infrastructure in cities too. Great point.
Excellent.
Jan's back. I was at Amazon Flex Driver for Philadelphia, visited 8 depots in my 4.5 years. Amazon leases or sells van to contractors, so drivers are not Amazon employees for benefits. I think we might be sliding off topic a little bit there. Ernest from North Carolina is here. That's good to see. Um, all right, we got some advertising in here. Price came out 25,000 loaded. All right, so we're talking about Energica here. Zero Fun joined us here.
Oh, okay, so the price is out then. Yeah, so 25, it's not cheap, but Energica's bikes have never been cheap. So when you're talking about the longest range electric motorcycle, the 25 doesn't scare me, but it's not cheap. And then here we see 22 for the base model. So that's again like right in line with all of Energica's pricing.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Supposedly can CCS charge over and over at 24 kilowatts. Okay, so that's pretty good. You have a smaller battery pack versus a car, so 24 kilowatts is going to be kind of throttling every single battery in that pack. But that's good to see. And then we've heard about the 3 kilowatt level 2 charging, which is great. And then, of course, we have the Tesla fan. Tesla is working on motorcycles and e-bikes. Just wait. We did have Elon Musk say he would never do a motorcycle because they're too dangerous.
Yeah, I'll
So,
believe it when I see it.
well, but he did mention a bike. I think they've got their hands full, to be honest.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right. He started on a 7 years ago. That's why Zero Fun and the Energica rider. No e-motors from Tesla as long as Elon is ahead. All right. We have a Tunisian guest, Morad. Welcome. Elon rode motorcycles when he was poor, so he knows motorcycles. Greg Yan, Macau or Kowloon. Later on, I clarified Macau to Hong Kong was the trip, although I think there is a Kowloon to Hong Kong Island ferry as well. Yep. All right. Back at Elon again. Carl in San Diego, the diesel fumes from the Catalina ferry make everyone super sick. Yeah, I agree. Like just in general, like if you're at a boatyard and those diesel motors are idling, it's just disgusting to be there. Like both for the water cleanliness and the air. So we're really looking forward to Candela and others getting in there. All right. We got a lot of Elon talk. All right, Carl in San Diego's back. Trikes like to roll when your two wheels are in the rear. This is why tadpole recumbent tricycles dominate. I think we agree with that, Micah. Is that
Yeah, the physics is sound.
yeah? I remember seeing Jeremy Clarkson on do a funny video where he's like rolling a three-wheeled car with the two wheels in the back
Oh
quite a
gosh.
bit, and that was probably the last time I ever thought that I would have a vehicle with two wheels in the back. Jub the Ville says reminds me of a 70cc trike. I would. What do we remember even the wattage on that thing?
It was, I think, 1.5 kilowatts, if I'm not mistaken. So
All
about
right.
2 horsepower.
Okay, so something like maybe 50 cc's. They are unusable and flip easily. Self-driving motorcycle will make it a matrix-like ride. All right, we're getting a little bit wild here. Belts are more efficient over 200 watts. So great for e-bikes, higher base friction, but doesn't stretch like chains, which make a chain become less efficient the more power applied. Well, that's interesting. Did you know that? Or do
I
we?
wasn't aware. I'll definitely want to look more into that because that is an interesting thing to consider.
Yeah, I mean, even if it kind of went to parity, I think that would be enough, really.
For sure.
Yesterday was World Bicycle Day. I hope you guys keep working in HOW. Or how we get better mode shift to bicycles instead of higher impact EVs. Other countries get this, but we're not there yet. I agree wholeheartedly. Um, and I think that's our last comment. Oh, there's one more. What are your thoughts about solid state battery? Micah, do you have any thoughts there?
I mean, in terms of small vehicles like e-bikes and micromobility, I think it's gonna totally change the game. I know GoGro's working on it for electric scooters, and if we get there in the next few years, that'll be great. I don't see any huge progress being made, but once you can take a very small battery for something like an e-bike and get 100 miles of range or something out of it, then you can really start scaling up, more speed, more power, that sort of thing, and not be limited by what are becoming these giant, like, juiced bikes style 1 kilowatt hour batteries that are 20, or maybe the juiced are more like 12 pounds, but some of these can get up to be pretty heavy.
Yeah, and one last one. Ray Living Good says I'd like to see a video of Micah testing out the new Voro Motors Roadrunner Tronic. Familiar with that?
Tronic. So I tested the Volvo Motors Roadrunner, which was like a hilarious little seated scooter. Is Tronic like a new version? I might have to do a little research. I didn't know if there's another one.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I did test out the base model, which was super fun and also pretty funny. So you can check that either on YouTube or Electrek. If you Google Electrek Volvo Motors Roadrunner, I'm sure it'll pop up first thing.
Cool. So that's it. I'd like to plug Pedigo is having an event in my town, Croton-on-Hudson, New York. They're having a ride tomorrow at 11 o'clock. If anybody's listening from the Westchester, New York area, please come out and join us. We're going to ride to the Croton Dam and back. So we'd love to see people out if you're around. But that's all from us.
Oh, that's awesome. I would attend if I could. But on that note, I think we'll call this the end of this podcast. We thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you back in 2 weeks for the next edition of the Wheelie Podcast. Take care, everyone.